Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban by J.K. Rowling. Set in context, the night bus was a form of transport invented by J.K. Rowling. She chose the name as it referred to the night buses that travel all over London. However, night also links with the idea of someone come to rescue or provide protection, i.e. the Knights of the Legend of King Arthur. These things are worth remembering if you choose to really apply your imagination to this week's writing task. Night buses are for witches and wizards who are flu sick or who feel frightened or queasy taking port keys. The night bus appears whenever a witch or wizard is in urgent need of transportation. A purple triple-decker bus. It has seats during the day and beds at night. It's not particularly comfortable, and I would advise against ordering hot drinks even if offered, because the bus has a habit of leaping from one destination to another at a moment's notice. The night bus is a relatively modern invention of Wizarding Society, which sometimes, though it will rarely admit it, takes ideas from the Muggle world. The need for some form of transportation that could be safely and discreetly used by the underage or the infirm has been felt for a while, and many suggestions have been made. Finally, Minister for Magic hit upon the idea of imitating the Muggles' relatively new bus service. The night bus hits the streets. While some wizards, mainly pure-blood fanatics, were enraged, nonetheless, the night bus has proved hugely popular in most of the community and remains busy to this day. Harry is in need of this help in Chapter 2 of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. After getting into a massive argument with his horrible relatives, the Dursleys, he storms out of their house, taking Hedwig and his Hogwarts belongings with him. Harry was several streets away before he collapsed onto a low wall in Magnolia Crescent. Panting from the effort of dragging his trunk, he sat quite still, anger still surging through him, listening to the frantic thumping of his heart. But after 10 minutes alone in the dark street, a new emotion overtook him: panic. Whichever way he looked at it, he had never been in a worse fix. He was stranded, quite alone, in the dark Muggle world, with absolutely nowhere to go. And the worst of it was, he had just done serious magic, which meant that he was almost certainly expelled from Hogwarts. He had broken the decree of the restriction of underage wizardry so badly, he was surprised the Ministry of Magic representatives weren't swooping down on him where he sat. Harry shivered and looked up and down Magnolia Crescent. What was going to happen to him? Would he be arrested, or would he simply be outlawed from the wizarding world? He thought of Ron and Hermione, and his heart sank even lower. Harry was sure that, criminal or not, Ron and Hermione would want to help him now, but they were both abroad, and with Hedwig gone, he had no means of contacting them. He didn't have any Muggle money either. There was a little wizard gold in the money bag at the bottom of his trunk, but the rest of the fortune his parents had left him was stored in the vault at Gringotts Wizarding Bank in London. He'd never be able to drag his trunk all the way to London. Unless he looked down at his wand, which he was still clutching in his hand. If he was already expelled, his heart was now thumping painfully fast. A bit more magic couldn't hurt. He had the invisibility cloak he had inherited from his father. What if he bewitched the trunk to make it feather light, tied it to his broomstick, covered himself in the cloak, and flew to London? Then he could get the rest of the money out of his vault and begin his life as an outcast. It was a horrible prospect, but he couldn't sit on this wall forever, or he'd find himself trying to explain to Muggle police why he was out in the dead of night with a trunk full of spell books and a broomstick. Harry opened his trunk again and pushed aside the contents, looking for the invisibility cloak. But before he found it, he straightened up and suddenly, looking around him once more, a funny prickling on the back of his neck had made Harry feel he was being watched. But the street appeared to be deserted, and no lights shone from any of the large square houses. He bent over his trunk again, but almost immediately stood up once more, his hand clenched on his wand. He had sensed rather than heard it. Someone or something was standing in a narrow gap between the garage and the fence behind him. Harry squinted at the black alleyway. If only it would move, then he would know whether it was just a stray cat or something else. "Loomis!" Harry muttered, and a light appeared at the end of his wand, almost dazzling him. He held it high over his head, and the pebble dashed walls of number 2 suddenly sparkled. The garage door gleamed, and between them, Harry saw quite distinctly the hulk and outline of something very big, with wide, gleaming eyes. Harry stepped backwards. His leg hit his trunk, and he tripped. His wand flew out of his hand as he flung out an arm to break his fall, and he landed hard in the gutter. There was a deafening bang, and Harry threw up his hands to shield his eyes against the sudden blinding light. With a yell, he rolled back onto the pavement just in time. A second later, a gigantic pair of wheels and headlights had screeched to a halt exactly where Harry had been lying. They belonged, as Harry saw when he raised his head, to a triple-decker, violently purple bus, which had appeared out of the thin air. Gold lettering over the windscreen spelt the night bus. For a split second, Harry wondered if he'd been knocked silly by his fall. Then a conductor in purple uniform leapt out of the bus and began to speak loudly to the knights. "Welcome to the night bus. Emergency transport for the stranded witch or wizard. Just stick out your wand hand, step on board, and we can take you anywhere you want to go. My name is Stan Shunpike, and I'll be your conductor this eve." The conductor stopped abruptly. He just caught sight of Harry, who was still sitting on the ground. Harry snatched up his wand again and scrambled to his feet. Close, too, he saw that Stan Shunpike was only a few years older than he was, 18 or 19 at most, with large protruding ears and a fair few pimples. "What are you doing down there?" said Stan, dropping his professional manner. "Fell over," said Harry. "What'd you fall over for?" sniggered Stan. "I didn't do it on purpose," said Harry, annoyed. One of the knees in his jeans was torn, and the hand he had thrown out to break his fall was bleeding. He suddenly remembered why he had fallen over and turned around quickly to stare at the alleyway between the garage and fence. The night bus's headlamps were flooding it with light, and it was empty. "What you looking at?" said Stan. "There was a big black thing," said Harry, pointing uncertainly into a gap. "Like a dog, but massive." He looked around at Stan, whose mouth was slightly open, with a feeling of unease. Harry saw Stan's eyes move to the scar on Harry's forehead. "What's that on your head?" said Stan abruptly. "Nothing," said Harry quickly, flattening his hair over his scar. If the Ministry of Magic was looking for him, he didn't want to make it too easy for them. "What's your name?" Stan persisted. "Neville Longbottom," said Harry, saying the first name that came into his head. So this bus," he went on quickly, hopping to distract Stan. "Did you say it goes anywhere?" "Yep," said Stan proudly. "Anywhere you like, long as it's on land. Can't do nothing underwater." "Here," he said, looking suspiciously in. "You did flag us down, didn't ya? Stuck out your wand hand, and didn't ya?" "Yes," said Harry quickly. "Listen, how much would it be to get to London?" 11 sickles, said Stan. "But for 13, you get hot chocolate, and for 15 you get hot water bottle and toothbrush of your choice." Harry rummaged once more in his trunk, extracted his money bag and shoved some silver into Stan's hand. He and Stan then lifted his trunk with Hedwig's cage balanced on top. Up the steps of the bus, there were no seats. Instead, half a dozen brass bedsteads stood beside the curtained windows. Candles burning in brackets beside each bed, illuminating the wood-panelled walls. A tiny wizard in a nightcap at the rear of the bus muttered, "Not now, thanks, I'm pickling some slugs," and rolled over in his sleep. "You have this one," Stan whispered, shoving Harry's trunk under the bed right behind the driver, who was sitting in an armchair in front of the steering wheel. "This is our driver, Ernie Prang. This is Neville Longbottom, Ernie Prang, an elderly wizard wearing very thick glasses, nodded to Harry, who nervously flattened his fringe again and sat down in his bed. "Take her away, Ern," said Stan, sitting down in the armchair next to Ernie. There was another tremendous bang, and the next moment Harry found himself flat on his bed, thrown backwards by the speed of the night bus. Pulling himself up, Harry stared out the dark window and saw that they were now bowling along a completely different street. Stan was watching Harry's stunned face with great enjoyment. This is where you flagged us. This is where we was flagged you. This is where we was before you flagged us down, he said. Where are we, Ern? Somewhere in Wales? Said Ernie. How come the muggles don't hear the bus, said Harry. Them, said Stan contemptuously, don't listen properly. Do they? They don't look properly either. Never notice nothing, they don't. Best go wake up Madam Marsh, Stan, said Ern. We'll be in Abergavenny in a minute. Stan passed Harry's bed and disappeared up a narrow wooden staircase. Harry was still looking out the window, feeling increasingly nervous. Ernie didn't seem to have mastered the use of steering wheel. The night bus kept mounting the pavement, but didn't hit anything. Lines of lampposts, letterboxes and bins jumped out of its way as it approached and back in position once it had passed. Stan came back downstairs, followed by a faintly green witch wrapped in a travelling cloak. Here you go, Madam Marsh, said Stan happily, as Ern stamped on the brakes and the bed slid a foot or so towards the front of the bus. Madam Marsh clamped a handkerchief to her mouth and tottered down the steps. Stan threw her bag out after her and rammed the door shut. There was another loud bang and they were thundering down a narrow country lane, trees leaping out of the way. Harry wouldn't have been able to sleep even if he had been travelling on a bus that didn't keep banging loudly and jumping 100 miles at a time. His stomach churned as he fell back to wondering what was going to happen to him and whether the Dursleys had managed to get Aunt Marge off the ceiling yet. Stan had unfurled a copy of the Daily Prophet and he was now reading with his tongue between his teeth. A large photograph of a sunken-faced man with long matted hair blinked slowly at Harry from the front page. He looked strangely familiar. That man, Harry said, forgetting his troubles for a moment. He was on the Muggle News. Stan turned to the front page and chuckled. Sirius Black, he said, nodding. Of course he was on the Muggle News, Neville. Where you been? He gave a superior sort of chuckle at the blank look on Harry's face, removed the front page, and handed it to Harry. You ought to read the papers more, Neville. Harry held the paper up to the candlelight and read, Black, still at large. Sirius Black, possibly the most infamous prisoner ever to be held in Azkaban fortress, is still eluding capture. The Ministry of Magic confirmed today. We are doing all we can to recapture Black, said the Minister for Magic, Cornelius Fudge, this morning, and we begged that the magical community to remain calm. Black is mad. He's a danger to anyone who crosses him, magic or muggle. Harry looked into the shadowed eyes of Sirius Black, the only part of the sunken face that seemed alive. Harry had never met a vampire, but he'd seen pictures of them in the Defence Against Dark Arts classes, and Black, with his waxy white skin, looked just like one. Scary looking thing, innit? Said Stan, who'd been watching Harry read. He murdered 13 people, said Harry, handing the page back to Stan. With one curse. Yep, said Stan. In front of witnesses and all, broad daylight. Black was a big supporter of you-know-who, he said. What, Voldemort? Said Harry, without thinking. Even Stan's pimples went white. You out of your tree? Yelped Stan. Did you say is your name for? Sorry, said Harry hastily. Sorry, I forgot. Forgot, said Stan weakly. Blind, my heart's going that fast. So. Black was a supporter of you-know-who, Harry prompted. Yeah, said Stan, still rubbing his chest. Yeah, that's right, very close to you-know-who. Anyway, when little Harry Potter put page you-know-who, Harry's nervously flattened his fringe down again. All you-know-who supporters was tracked down, wasn't they, Ern? Most of them knew it was all over and they came quiet, but not Sirius Black. Anyway, they cornered Black in the middle of the street, full of muggles, and Black took out his wand and he blasted it out the street apart, and a wizard got it, and so did a dozen muggles what got it in the way. Horrible, eh? And you know what Black did then? Stan continued in a dramatic whisper. What? Said Harry. Laughed, said Stan. Just stood there and laughed. And reinforcements from the Ministry of Magic got there, went with him, quiet as anything, still laughing his head off. Because he's mad, isn't he, Ern? If he weren't when he went to Azkaban, he will be now, said Ern, in his slow voice. Serves him right, mind, after what he did. Talk about something else, Stan. There's a good lad. Them Azkaban guards give me the collywobbles. Stan put the paper away reluctantly, and Harry leant against the window of the night bus, feeling worse than ever. What if he got sent to Azkaban for blowing up his aunt? The night bus rolled through the darkness, scattering bushes and bollards, telephone boxes and trees, and Harry lay restless and miserable on his feather bed. One by one, wizards and witches in dressing gowns and slippers descended from the upper floors to leave the bus. They all looked very pleased to go. Finally, Harry was the only passenger left. Clapping in his hands, Stan said, Whereabouts in London? Diagon Alley, said Harry. Righto, said Stan. Hold tight then. Bang! They went thundering along Charing Cross Road. Harry sat up and watched buildings squeezing themselves out of the night bus's way. The sky was getting lighter. He would lie low for a couple of hours, go to Gringotts, and the moment it opened, then he set off, where he didn't know. Ern slammed on the brakes and the night bus skidded to a halt in front of a small, shabby-looking pub, the Leaky Cauldron. Thanks, Harry, said Ern. He jumped down the steps and helped Stan lower his trunk and head his cage onto the pavement. Well, said Harry, bye then. But Stan wasn't paying attention. He was goggling at the shadowy entrance of the Leaky Cauldron. There you are, Harry, said a voice. Before Harry could turn, he felt a hand on his shoulder. Harry looked at the owner of the hand on his shoulder, and he felt a bucket full of ice cascade into his stomach. He had walked right into Cornelius Fudge, the Minister for Magic himself.